The prosecution turned to Darling's ex-girlfriend to show how Darling told conflicting stories about what happened to Wanda on that cliff.
They were taking pictures, and he was going back to take a picture of her, and when he turned back around, she was just not there.
And then, a few days later, she said, he called again with a completely different story. Now he was claiming Wanda had committed suicide.
He then went on to tell me that he saw her jump off the cliff.
But why would she do that?
He said that Wanda was very depressed and upset.
So many stories, only one could be true. Jay Darling had already admitted that he tried to defraud life insurance companies out of a small fortune. Did he also murder his trusting young bride just to get his hands on the money? Now, the defense was going to tell its own, very different story of the death of Wanda Darling. Surely the simplest explanation is she got a little push from behind.
If you think that's simple, Keith, then you may have a talent for crime.
The problem was your client did have a talent for crime.
Not for killing people, not for injuring people, not for hurting people. The difference between a con man and a killer is night and day.
Lester Holt, welcome back to Dateline on ID. We now return to our story, Cliffhanger. And once again, here's Keith Morrison.
It was almost 9 years after Wanda Darling took that terrible fall from a cliff in Homer, Alaska. Larry Kuhn's dogged investigation had finally made it to a trial.
In my opinion, it was probably one of the most egregious acts of domestic violence.
But remember, there are two sides to every story. James McComas was Jay Darling's defense attorney, a man who agreed he was representing an admitted crook, but not a killer. Looks pretty bad for this guy.
That's the basis of suspicion that might lead investigators to want to find evidence in the case. The suggestion that you're making, and really that they've made all along, is that that's enough. And it's not enough when you understand the surrounding circumstances.
McComas set out to show the jury, piece by piece, that Jay's behavior was not as suspicious as it may have seemed. Why take a private road to a lonely bluff? Because, says McComas, they were simply exploring, like tourists do. What about all those conflicting stories he told about exactly what happened? That he saw her fall, that he didn't see her fall, that she was taking a picture and lost her balance, that she was picking a flower and tripped? Why did he tell conflicting stories about what happened on that cliff?
Because he didn't know the why. That's the reason. And Jay Darling pled guilty to what it was he did. He made false representations to try and get a large insurance scheme so he could fake his own death. And he pled not guilty to what he didn't do. He never murdered that woman.
Obviously, Jay Darling had hired a persuasive attorney. But as McComas laid out his defense, would a jury agree?